I think it's about time. A new chapter begins in Guild Wars 2. Secrets of the Obscure. Let's talk about the story. Let's talk about what's going on here. So, expansion pack. What is in the expansion pack? I don't know why I'm laughing. Okay, I'm laughing at the fact that we have content in Guild Wars 2. Who would possibly imagine that? So, if you read our February and May studio update blogs, you've heard us talk about updating our approach to development to provide more consistent update for both the core game and expansion content. Guild Wars 2 Secrets of the Obscure benefits from this new approach. At launch, you'll be able to play through a self-contained story following launch. This story will be seamlessly expanded upon in updates that come out every few months, telling a second standalone arc. I like this, actually. In my opinion, this is the best way to do it. I think this was quite strange about Path of Fire. Path of Fire had this issue where it was kind of okay. It kind of cliffhangered you a little bit. You played through the story, and you beat Balthazar, and then it's like, oh, it threatens you with Kralkatorrik. So I guess it'll probably be similar to that, actually, I guess. But it's sometimes when you cliffhanger too much, it's not ideal. So what they're going to do here is that the actual expansion itself, you play through all of that, and you get a satisfying conclusion, right? But there'll probably be some slightly unresolved issues. Maybe they'll tease the next, threat or the next kind of story at the end of that, and then they'll go through the next story arcs as the updates continue. So I think that's pretty interesting. Pretty good way of doing it. It's very... I'm curious how long the story is going to be. Because End of Dragons was about... It was about 10 hours, I think. So, assuming that it's going to be about half the story length, we could be expecting 5 hours of story on launch. Well, I think, to be fair, 10 hours was quite a quick playthrough. I went through it quite quickly. I think you could certainly be expecting 6 to 8 hours out of this expansion. If EOD took kind of like 12 to 14, 16 hours, right? That kind of thing. It depends how fast you play through it, of course, right? And what's going on there. But there you go. The story of Guild Wars 2, Secrets of the Obscure, represents the opening of a new chapter. The Elder Dragon cycle that dominated major events from the original launch through Guild Wars 2 Elder Dragons has come to a close. Yes, very nice. This is fixing one of the really big problems that the game has had, is they've been shackled to this story for ages, for literally 10 years. And what's really exciting about this is that I think they're going to be dropping a lot of the characters, right, that we know. And in fact, there's actually some story in the game that kind of does exactly that. You actually go to... spoilers, by the way. Okay, so, if you don't want to be spoiled, then what are you doing here, to be honest, right? Like, it wouldn't make any sense if you're here and you don't want to get spoiled. But anyway, what's going to happen? Aurene, she's going away, going to sleep, having a little nap after saving the world, right? And I think we're going to see similar things with a lot of the other characters. Like, other characters are going to get tidied away, basically, and shuffled off, and then we're going to introduce a lot of new characters. Why? Well, when you have an expansion, you have loads of new players. New players kind of want to get into whatever's new, the latest content, typically. That's how a lot of players engage with the game. As a result of that, I think it makes a lot of sense to actually have these expansions be very standalone, be almost quite episodic. You can still have some overarching themes, of course, and you can have some characters like being connected, but I think it makes a lot of sense to actually start fresh a little bit. So you don't have like 10 years worth of backstory that you're going to completely miss if you're a new player to the game, which is good. And also, it's just nice to keep it fresh, right? Do we really need to see any more Braham? Okay, I'm not sure if we do. Do we need any more Timey? Probably not. Although we might, I have a feeling that Timey will probably stick around, but I guess we'll see. I guess we will see. But yeah, there's actually some really cool story stuff in the game. I definitely recommend checking it out. One, the Wizard's Tower is gone, and they've actually updated loads of NPCs in Kessex Hills with dialogue that reflects, which it's a really nice touch, actually. And there's also a bonus story instance that basically just wraps up Ender Dragons, which I think is nice. Like, put a bow on it, and then move on. Ender Dragons is officially ended. In the quarter that follows, a new force rises to threaten Tyria as you fight back against Cryptis invaders from the mists. You'll uncover the answers to mysteries that have haunted Tyria from the time of the original Guild Wars saga. Ancient rivals come into play. The Wars Race. Now, honestly, the lore nerds are going to have fun there because that's very kind of indicative of some Realm of Torment style stuff, right? Maybe, Menzies, right? Like these kind of like God realm stuff, these demonic entities. Very interesting. I imagine I'm actually not really a huge lore buff. Some of you lot might actually have more insight into what that could be. Yeah, Fissure of Woe, right? All this kind of stuff. Like kind of suggesting some of this stuff there. They haven't really given too much away, and this is very typical of ArenaNet with the actual enemies here, the Cryptus. They've mentioned the name, but they haven't really gone into any detail about the motivation of these things and what, you know, like what exactly they're here for. There are a few hints about the place. They've said that basically, you know, now that the dragons are gone, there's blood in the water, right? And like other entities, right, from the, you know, kind of like the cosmos of Guild Wars, they're kind of looking in at Tyria, right, and going like, ooh, we're gonna feed, because there's no dragons, we're gonna feast, right? So that's kind of the implication, right? Which is very horror theme, right? I'm kind of reminded of, again, stuff like Dead Space, these consuming forces, or the Tyranids from Warhammer 40,000, right? Or the Zerg from StarCraft. They're kind of looking in, like, ready to eat you, you know? Like, I think it's an interesting premise, right? It's an exciting premise that I think could be great. And you know what I'm really looking forward to? I'm really looking forward to the music, right? I think that the composers for Guild Wars 2 are going to have a field day making this really creepy, dark, scary stuff. And we actually already saw a little bit of a taste of this in the new Fractal. In the new Fractal that also released very recently, they play like this slightly twisted, spooky version of some of the End of Dragons themes when you're fighting a very powerful and probably, again, very familiar demon to a lot of you who've played Guild Wars 1. And it sounds great, right? The atmosphere is fantastic. It really, really is. And there, well, yeah. And I said blood in the water, and there it is. Tyria is blood in the water. The mists are watching. The sharks are coming, guys. So 2 explorable zones in the Wizard's Tower outpost, floating high above the Tyrian coast, will be available at launch. In the releases that will follow every few months, a 3rd explorable zone will open in conjunction with the ongoing story that plays out. So again, we're going to be seeing that map added to the game and probably expanded, a bit like Guyala. However, I actually think, look, people are going to meme me for the copium here, but I really think that actually it won't just be a tunnel this time. I think they'll probably expand the map pretty significantly when they actually add it to the game. So it won't just be an extra tunnel attached to the side with like a very, very scuffed meta event. I think that we'll probably see the desired implementation of how this is actually going to play out with these future releases. Well, you know, let's see how well it ages, I guess, right? We'll see if, you know, if my statement is a foolish statement or not, but there it is. Not a surprise to see there's a new hub world, by the way. I think that's very wise to add that with honestly, I think we'll see that with every expansion. There'll be like a hub world with like vendors and, you know, where you can trade your currencies in. I think it's good to centralize stuff, especially for new players, because new players are already going to be confused by the bizarre complexity that is Guild Wars 2. So yeah, you know, it's nice to kind of go in that direction. You know, we're going to need that. We're going to need it. It will be very pretty, guys, and everyone needs a pretty place to AFK. Very important. And then it's the Skyscale, guys. And look at this. And this is something that we're going to talk about a little bit more in the rewards section of this stuff. But this is very cool. The Skyscale is basically we're going to make the Skyscale readily accessible to as many players as possible. New Skyscale acquisition with the expansion, so it's going to be very easy, basically. You're going to get it while you're playing the story, very similar to Path of Fire. And check this out. Once you've unlocked it, you'll get a new Skyscale skin collection. Completing that collection will award you with a terrifying and beautiful Cryptus-themed Skyscale skin. I'm not sure about the beautiful, a little bit on the terrifying, though. I'm not going to lie. It is quite disturbing to look at. I felt they did not do a very good job picking the dye colors for this. It looks it doesn't look very good, to be honest, here. But I have to say, I do like some in-game mount skins. And this is a big step. Bear in mind, guys, there is one mount skin in-game right now for Guild Wars 2, specifically the Guild Rider Warclaw. It's only one. And they're kind of going hard on this. They are going for multiple mount skins because they're also adding a Griffin skin that you'll be able to get from the Vault. And I think they've kind of potentially implied that they're going to be doing that maybe in the future as well, that there will be more in-game mount skins, which I think is fantastic, right? I think that I'm always going to be very happy with any move ArenaNet makes towards rewarding players for in-game activities, right? I think that's fantastic. It's a core part of the game. I think it's very, very different to convert gold and buy something rather than, you know, completing a collection to get something, or beating a boss to get something, or, you know, doing a world boss and getting a drop. I think those things, those experiences are very, very different, and I'm really happy to see stuff like this being added to the game. It is good. I give it the thumbs up. They're also updating some of the masteries, and they're going to give us a bit of an overview of how a lot of these masteries work. So let's kind of go ahead and kind of get into this. This is a bit of a content overview of what's going on in the expansion. So you get a brand new mastery line, because they can't give you the old mastery line because that's Living Story Force. They've got to make a new one, but it's going to be like a dual purpose one. So this one will essentially allow you to use the Skyscale, but it also gives you some bonus features, and it interacts with the other one, right? Very much like how the mounts, you know, when you complete one mount mastery, it buffs all your other mounts. It's going to be like this, but specifically with the Skyscale, or specifically with flying mounts, it seems. So if you take a look here, and by the way, names are pending, but take a look at this. Air Rescue, so in other words, you can mount while you're in the air. If you have both mastery tracks, you get Bond of Vigor, so you get all of your endurance and like Skyscale flying juice back immediately. 2, Fireball grabs an aerial flame attack while mounted on the Skyscale. This is just some classic RP here, right? You know, think about it. Like, you can dismount and do a Fireball. Why can't you just fire a Fireball normally? Well, now you can. I wonder if they're going to tune this aggressively as well. I think they'll make this quite strong, because they made the turtle quite strong, relatively speaking, to how a lot of the other mounts are. I feel like they're going to make this quite powerful, because I think ArenaNet is kind of envisioning, you know, players, you know, chasing down a boss, swooping down on it with Skyscales, and then like blasting it with fire, and then landing, and then getting off the mountain and hitting it with abilities, right? This kind of like very kind of cinematic experience, I think, is what they're looking for here. Wall spring, we know this. You can just, you know, you can launch off the wall, and if you have both of them, then you can charge faster and launch farther. Wind beneath the wings, you can use updrafts, and bear in mind, flying mounts. This applies to griffins as well, and this was actually clarified in another article, actually. Everything that applies to the Skyscale here applies to the Griffin too. So in other words, Griffin will be able to use updrafts, right? Too. Right? And Griffin will be able to use ley lines. And Griffin will be able to mount in combat because of combat launch. Gain the ability to mount your Skyscale in combat. I believe that also applies to the Griffin, I think. So very exciting. Your flying mount, you'll be able to leap into the air and fly around all over the place. And you can use ley lines, you can zoom, zoom, zoom. They'll probably design this around the... they'll design the expansion around this. There'll be loads of ley lines. There'll be loads of updrafts, right? So you can use them. And of course, like getting that value out of your Heart of Thorns mastery as well. That's a good question if it applies to the turtle. There's no... I don't think it would apply to the turtle. I mean, the turtle can technically fly, but it's got like jetpacks. So I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be the turtle. But it would be quite fun if you could. But this does make the Skyscale, I think, pretty insane. I do actually have some slight concerns. I'm going to be a bit of a party pooper here. Being able to mount in combat, I think makes the Skyscale and the Griffin very good, right? Absolutely insane. And I think that's part of their intention. I think they want to make like almost like a concept of elite mounts in a way. I think they want Skyscale, Griffin, and Turtle to be kind of a bit above the others in terms of power level, I think, because they have some collections behind them, right? They have a little bit of you know, work behind obtaining them. They want them to be like very, you know, attractive to players to go after. Although I guess they're giving the Skyscale away for, you know, probably for free, realistically, so players can use it. You know, a little bit of a Dragonflight inspiration there. But I do have some concerns about that, because if that mount is OP, which I think it almost certainly will be, then I think that's going to reduce the variety a lot. We'll have to see if they can come up with some design that actually keeps the other mounts relevant, because it's just the combat thing is so strong that I think other mounts will actually struggle to be relevant, especially when you're actually playing content, you know, you're playing events and so on, and, you know, you're out in the open world adventuring. It's going to be a little bit tricky to justify using another mount when the Skyscale is just so unbelievably good. And they better be very careful with that in instance content as well. Like, yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, they're going to have to be very careful. I wonder if they have to just disable mounts in certain raids, because otherwise you'll be able to, like, mount up while you're doing a raid boss in Wing 5 through 7. That would be a little bit weird, wouldn't it? And here we go. This is the next mastery here. So, the Skyscale, Astral Ward, and Heart of the Obscure Masteries will be available at launch. But what do these things actually do? So you find new allies, you talk to the wizards, basically. You know, they've been brought out of their seclusion by the Cryptid threat. They're going to help you. You get access to a powerful artifact called the Heart of the Obscure. With Cryptid's forces pouring into Tyria through portals in the mist, it falls to you and the Astral Ward to track down and close those portals and deal with any cryptists that have managed to pass through them. The Heart of the Obscure and Astral Ward Masters will aid you as you hunt and close rifts throughout Tyria. Together, the two Masterminds will allow you to explore the world more freely, take on greater threats, and earn rich rewards. There's actually a little bit of extra detail on this as well in an MMORPG.com article, or Massively Overpowered, sorry, rather. It is an article situation on Massively Overpowered, and they gave us a little bit more detail on this. So check this out. The Heart of the Obscure. This important tool will serve as a player's master key to explore the new expansions. They make progress in upgrading this mystical stone. They earn the ability to open special doors and reward chests. Standard mastery stuff, right? But here's where it gets a little bit spicy. Create support items like leyline and updraft generators and open and seal the rifts for the Astral Ward. So the really spicy one there is, of course, the interaction with leylines, updrafts, and, of course, your mount, which can now fly on those things, too, and get your endurance back. So that is pretty juicy. I'm really curious how that is actually going to work. That sounds really wonky and really weird, but very powerful at the same time. So you'll be able to almost like build your own terrain and like traverse the world using your own updrafts and ley lines. I imagine they'll be personal. I can't imagine, there's no way they could ever make them like public so other people could use them. Maybe if you're in the same party as someone, you can like chain them together, but otherwise it would just be an absolute fiesta with like thousands of people like throwing these things down. Well, I guess not thousands, but like tens of people throwing them down will be a little bit weird. But we'll see the implementation on that, but that definitely does sound pretty interesting. And we also have a bit of insight on the Astral Ward here as well. Basically, it seems like the Astral Ward, they're basically gonna like send you on hunts and bounty contracts. So they may be bringing back some kind of implementation of the bounty system as well. And it kind of, it's really implying that this is actually going to happen in old content as well. Like throughout the game. Because there's no way it's just going to be in the new maps the way they're talking about it. And that is quite exciting. Because I think that what they'll probably do is put some of it in old expansions and maybe even the core game. And why would they do that, right? Why would they give away free content to free-to-play players? Well, for a start, they might make it so you might not be able to participate. You might not be able to go through these rifts, right, to fight the enemies there if you're a core player. But even if there is like a pre-event where you have to fight some enemies coming out of the rift, this is like an advert for the expansion. They're saying, like, look how cool this is. Like, you should come and play, right? That's basically what it says, which is pretty exciting. Yeah. In-combat mounting and updraft use will also apply to the Griffin. So there you go. Boom. Yes, you love to see it. You absolutely love to see it, guys. Isn't that fantastic? And there's a fourth mastery line in the first major release. And, of course, what I do like about these approaches to masteries is that they haven't introduced additional bloat, right? End of Dragons suffered a lot from this. End of Dragons had Jadebot, Skiff, Turtle, Arborstone, and they were just... They were kind of do-nothing masteries, and this was in Icebrood Saga as well. Like, you had these weird kind of gimmicks, like the, you know, the way station and so on, right? And all of the, you know, the opening chests, right, in Bureau Marches that were overly specific. Yeah, you had fishing. I mean, fishing, I guess, is like, you know, I'll say fishing is at least, you know, like a new... I think that one makes the most sense out of a lot of the EOD masteries. Like, fishing, you know, I kind of get it, you know, what's wrong with fishing, guys? But... yeah, I don't think the AD Masters are very good, and these sound a little bit more gameplay-oriented, which I think is good, because I think that if you just have these things kind of isolated as their own mini-games, it just gets bloaty and weird and also irrelevant very, very quickly, whereas integrating it with the current systems that already exist makes a lot more sense. So I'm a big fan of the design that we're kind of doing here. And hey, new mastery line. I wonder what they'll come up with, guys. Okay, you know, hopefully it's good, because I think ArenaNet need to not be too concerned about committing to always introducing new masteries. If you keep introducing new masteries that for no reason, and you don't have like a good justification for it, I don't think it necessarily adds a lot to the game. I think you're better off releasing content. This already appears to be a fairly content-focused, content-heavy expansion. I want to see them go in that direction. I think I'm pretty sure most gamers, maybe you agree with me, maybe you think I'm an idiot, but I think the best thing that Guild Wars 2 could do is just release more of what already exists. The game is good. The combat is good. We like the meta events. We like the bosses. We know the story, you know, it's pretty good. I mean, some people don't like it. It's all right, though. It's at least all right, I'm pretty sure. So give us more. More! So... I'm not sure I really care about Masteries that much. We love raids, guys. Yeah, we love raids. Raids are so good. The most popular game mode by far. Okay? It's... And finally, we have the final part of the new chapter. The new chapter. Everything changes with Secrets of the Obscure. Ooh, yeah, okay. 2 strike missions with CMs and a fractal. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, guys. It's interesting to see this because this is 2 raid bosses a year, basically, and 1 fractal a year. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is certainly the most memeable part of the entire expansion. This is very low. This is not a lot. And to be fair, you can't expect them to release a lot because the instance content scene in Guild Wars 2 is very small. Right? It's a small part of the demographic. I think in a lot of ways, I'm almost surprised that they're committing to this many strikes. I almost would have expected it to go the other way around, right? Like more fractals and less strikes, like 1 strike a year and 2 fractals a year. But I imagine strike missions are a lot easier to make because they're basically just going to reuse a lot of the story bosses and kind of juice them up, right? And put them in their own instance. So that's probably why. Whereas fractals are typically original, right? Hey, maybe they could do some unoriginal fractals. One thing about fractals, and this is a bit of guesswork based on the previous 2, specifically Sunquar Peak and Silent Surf now. And this might be controversial. And if you don't like this, or you do like this, I don't think there's a right answer here, right? I think they're moving in an interesting direction. The recent Fractal basically had 0 trash events. It was very quick to get to the final boss. There's only 1 boss, and the boss is pretty tanky and is a long encounter. And Sunquar Peak is kind of like that. It's not exactly like that, but the challenge mode is. You just skip to the boss and just fight it immediately. I have a bit of a feeling, a bit of a sensation, if you will, that they are kind of moving fractals in a more 5-man strike direction. I imagine, and this may not be popular, I imagine that's for the same reason. Production. They want to basically be able to make more. They want to kind of cut out some of the fluff, I guess, and really focus on the combat and the boss encounters. However, I think they need to be careful because I do think there is something very nice about fractals being that dungeon experience in Guild Wars 2, right? Where you have to kind of delve in, clear out some mobs, fight multiple bosses in a row within a dungeon. They're getting harder and harder. The final boss is the hardest and culminates with the story. I think they've got to be a little bit careful there. Right, because they still want to kind of express this more narrative-driven experience, I think, in Fractals. And doing that without having a slightly slower pacing, right, and not going directly to the final encounter can be difficult. And I do think you lose something by having all of the content kind of playing out the same. If Fractals and Strike missions end up being essentially the same thing, but with 5 and 10 players, there's an advantage there that, of course, players will be able to transition between the 2 game modes more easily. However, I do think variety is the spice of life, and fully losing that kind of movement-based, kind of almost like platformer speedrun experience that Guild Wars 2 is very well known for in dungeons and fractals, and even raids, actually. I think you got to watch out for that. And I do hope that that isn't the case, actually. I'll say it, okay? I personally think I would love some more fractals, a bit more like Nightmare Fractal, right? Or a bit like Shattered Observatory Fractal, and then have the challenge mode on top of that, where you do have multiple encounters, multiple bosses, right? A bit more of a slower pacing and some movement-oriented challenges too, little puzzle mechanics and so on. We did see some puzzles, kind of, like some movement puzzles in the recent one. It's almost like a jumping puzzle to get to the final boss, but I think it's not quite the same. It's not quite the same in that regard. The boss is pretty cool, though. I'll give him that. Very excited for the challenge mode. Stay tuned for that. Of course, the challenge modes for this content isn't going to be there on launch. They're going to spread it out. That's both. There's 2 reasons for this. They're going to probably try and fix some of the bugs because, oh, believe me, these are going to release pretty broken, in my opinion. And secondly, they probably just want to spread stuff out, right, and make it a bit of an event, make it a bit exciting in this regard. Very excited for the 2, for the 2 strike missions, and we actually know their names too in this article here. Check this out. We have 2 new challenging 10-player instance encounters: the Cosmic Observatory and the Temple of Thebe. Wow. Isn't that exciting, guys? I think that's, I don't really know what that tells us, but it tells us something. One comment that I would have is I would very much like to hear a bit of the design philosophy and the vision for strike missions. Because I'll speak for myself here. I'm very interested in progression raiding. You know, I love stuff like Harvest Temple Challenge Mode. I'm getting into Mythic raiding in WoW, actually, just right now, funnily enough. I am a betrayer, guys. I have betrayed. No, I'm kidding. This is the kind of stuff that I enjoy. I enjoy a challenge. I enjoy something that it's going to take me multiple days to beat, or even, hell, I'm a bit of a lunatic. I would like something that takes over a week to actually beat, of playing quite a lot and like really practicing, right? That's what I enjoy. I really like that, overcoming that challenge. And one thing that's very noticeable about this, I have no idea how hard this content is going to be. I have absolutely no idea, right? And I want to know. Don't get me wrong. If ArenaNet say, yeah, I'm sorry, Teapot, we can't really make like really hard content all the time. You know what? That's fair enough. I'm totally fine. But I would really like them to set my expectations on this. If they say, yeah, we're kind of looking, we're looking for something kind of like Kaineng Overlook challenge mode, some of the raid challenge modes. That's the kind of difficulty we're looking for. Honestly, that's great. I can be prepared for that. I can enjoy that. I can 100% enjoy that. But if I go in expecting it to be Harvest Temple and it ends up being, significantly easier, then that's going to be like, oh, it's going to be a little disappointing, right? So I would really like to actually have some clarity on this, on what they're looking to do with both the Fractal and actually the strike missions. Another thing that's also kind of worth noting is they may have to kind of consider more difficulty settings as well. One thing that I would really like them to do is make the story missions repeatable. They kind of had this in EOD, but I want them to go further. I think 3 difficulty settings for Guild Wars 2 will be great. 1, make the story instance repeatable. Make it soloable and basically scale, like a Dragon Response mission, except not scuffed. So you can join an instance, even a public queue, like a public instance, but just obviously not make the system terrible like it currently is. Okay? You join, you can get your loot, get your rewards in the story mode, basically. Then you have your normal mode, which is the normal mode, and then after that, you have the challenge mode, if for the uber tryhards, right? All that kind of stuff. Because right now, I do feel like strike missions are in a bit of a weird spot where I think the normal mode is a bit of a hassle for most players, and honestly can take a very long time. It can be frustrating. It might be a bit too difficult for other players who are new to the game. And the challenge mode, I think, it's a very small percentage of players who are interested in beating that content, especially more than once, which obviously is completely fair enough. So I really think that I want to see ArenaNet refine their difficulty profiling and maybe expand to a 3rd setting that's basically just like repeating the story instance, which they already have, right? So they might be able to do that relatively easily. They already have the story instance. So just go ahead and use that. Because difficulty is important. And again, I was almost surprised that they were actually adding this much instance content because, yeah, it's not exactly popular, guys, okay? There's not that many people, it's hard to find 9 people, all right? Like 9 other people, it's a high number. It's a very high number, my friends. It absolutely is. But anyway, that's it, gamers, okay? Ooh. That is it for the kind of new content that's coming there. And those are my thoughts on all the new content and masteries coming out with Secrets of the Obscure Guild Wars 2. Referral link in the description, by the way. But anyway, let me know what you think about that, and I'll go watch the other videos too. Many reviews today. Many reviews on many things. And now it's time to move on to the next one. And yes, the Hardstuck link does work. That's right, gamers. You can go to hardstuck.gg and pre-order Guild Wars 2 Secrets of the Obscure and support Hardstuck. Do it today.